Hello and welcome to another edition of Movement is Medicine with Akoji Wellness. Today I'm going to be walking through some basic movements and exercises that can be done in order to strengthen the body, increase body awareness, flexibility, balance, static strength, as well as dynamic strength and some control. Like everything, you should definitely warm up before you do any one of these exercises. Basic stuff, jump rope, bringing your knees up, twisting the body from side to side. The good thing about this particular video is that some of the movements can be done as a warm-up and they can be used dynamically and used as part of a normal exercise routine. I always like to start off all of my workouts with some type of total body warm-up. And in this particular warm-up, I'm going to be demonstrating and showing how to move the body in the three major planes of motion. The frontal plane, the sagittal plane, and the transverse plane, which basically means bending to the side or lateral bending, folding forward or flexing, and twisting or rotating. So the first part of it is side bending or lateral flexion. So just taking the arm, keeping the gaze forward, and reaching down, trying to touch your toes. You'll feel the engagement in the side of the body, and just rotating that back and forth, moving the body through this plane of motion. Warms up the obliques, it warms up the core, a little bit of legs as well. The second part of the three-part movement is flexion or forward fold, standing forward fold. This one's pretty simple. Just fold your upper body over, reach your toes if you can, and just do this a couple times to warm the body up. And then the final piece is the rotation or twisting, turning the upper body to one side, pivoting on the foot, and just rotating the body back and forth. So these three moves can be done separately, or they can be done in tandem as a combination. First with the lateral flexion, followed by the forward flexion or the forward fold, and then the rotation. Sometimes folks have limitations in these particular exercises, so there's certainly ways to modify them. If you can't reach your toes on that side bend, you can just place your hand on your thigh and slide the arm down and just do that back and forth. If you're really having trouble reaching down at all, you can just place your hands on your hips and bend over from side to side. Laterally flex from side to side during this movement. For the forward fold, if you're having trouble touching your toes, you can bend your knees as you fold forward. Your legs don't have to be straight, so your knees can be slightly bent and you can get that forward folding movement. Also, you don't have to fold forward that far down. You can place your hands on your hips and just fold forward about halfway. For the rotation, the final piece of this three-part movement, if you're having trouble pivoting or you have trouble with depth perception or balance, you don't have to pivot on your feet. You could keep your feet grounded and just twist your upper body back and forth. So the first movement we're going to be dealing with is the plank. Plank with the knees off the ground and palms on the ground. There's different versions of the plank. There's different things that are called the plank, but for this particular video, we're going to be dealing with this type of plank, which is basically the top of a push-up. So this is a foundational exercise for building overall strength, body awareness, static strength, and even pushing strength. So first, this is an example of the plank. The shoulders are stacked on top of the elbow, which is stacked on top of the wrist. The feet can be together here or about hip distance apart. The fingers are pointing forward. The glutes are slightly engaged. The pelvis is tucked under, and the gaze is in between the palms or slightly past the longest finger. And here you are pushing the ground away as hard as you can. Triceps are spinning towards each other, and you're just maintaining and holding this strong static position. So now let's break down some of the common mistakes that I see when they are doing this plank. First of all, the position of the wrist. You don't want your wrist turned out or the fingers pointing away from you. You want to make sure that your middle and index fingers are pointing straight ahead, and your shoulder is stacked on top of the elbow, which is stacked directly on top of the wrist. It's not wrong if your shoulders are forward or behind the wrist. Those are different moves, but for this particular posture that we're doing, you want to stack the bones up. Another mistake is dropping your head too far low. You want your gaze to be in between the palms or slightly beyond that. You don't want your head to drop in this position. Another common mistake is letting the hips drop. So like I said before, you want your glutes to be slightly engaged and you want your body to be in a straight line. Another common mistake are the legs being too far apart. Again, you want your feet to be about hip width apart or touching. Another common mistake is turning this plank into more of a downward facing dog, where your hips are up high, the glutes are in the air, and again, your shoulders are actually behind your wrist. So once you have all of these points, you just press the ground away, find that turtle shell back, pushing the ground away, kind of a rounded spine, and you hold the position. Next is an excellent lower body movement to do. It increases flexibility, strength, relieves pressure on the low back, and it's actually just a really great resting position. So it's called the deep squat. This is an example of it. Just squat down, but down as low as possible, making sure that your ankles or feet are turned out to the side, kind of a 45-degree angle away from you, not letting the feet turn in. You don't want your knees to collapse in. Puts a lot of stress on the knees and the hips as well. Opening up the hips as wide as you can, using your elbows to kind of open up the hips even more. Posture is nice and tall, gaze is forward, and you're coming out of a turtle shell. You don't want your head to sink down in between your shoulders. You don't want that slumped over posture. You want your shoulders to be retracted or pulled back, chest totally open, and the gaze forward. This move can be difficult for a lot of folks. So if you have trouble squatting all the way down, and as you go down, you lose your balance, you just use a pole. So the exact same principles apply, but now you're just using a pole to guide you down into the lowest point of that squat. Grab the pole, walk all the way down, establish the good squatting position, feet turned out to the side, elbows pushing the knees open so they don't collapse in. You're coming out of that turtle shell, pulling the shoulders back and keeping the gaze totally forward. And using the pole now to establish and hold that upright position. If you're trying to squat down and you're using the pole and you're about to fall, just grab it. Use the pole to establish that strong erect position and you hold there. This exercise is excellent. It could be held up for several minutes at a time. As you're building up, you may be a little bit sore, things may be a little bit creaky, but build up. Start off with 10 seconds if you have that, a few sets of 10 seconds. Build up to 30 seconds, build up to a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. This exercise should be done on a daily basis. It frees up the lower back, it increases joint mobility, and it's an excellent way just to warm up and counteract all the stresses and all the negative disease-causing postures that we do on a daily basis. The next movement we're going to be working on is the pull-up prep. So, of course, you'll need a pull-up bar. The first thing you have to do is determine where your arms are going to be in reference to the bar. You want your palms to be lined up directly with your shoulders. You'll reach up and grab the bar. The key with this exercise, again, it's a pull-up prep, so you're not doing the entire pull-up, is to keep your arms straight the entire time. Some key points are to make sure to line up the wrist with the elbow with the shoulder. All of that should be in one straight line. So you grab the bar with the overhand grip and pull. Again, not bending the elbows. You know you're doing the movement right when your back kind of arches a little bit and your chest puffs out. And you should feel most of the contraction in the lats or the muscles kind of under the armpit. Again, keeping the arms totally straight, lining up the wrist with the elbow and the shoulder. Common mistake is to let your head extend backwards. So as you're doing the movement, you want to keep your gaze as forward as possible. When you pull up, don't let the head arch back. And this is a prep for the pull-ups before you start to actually do the full range of motion pull-up. The next exercise we're going to be doing is a combination move. So you'll start off in your static plank position, lining up the shoulders with the elbow and the wrist, legs straight back, knees off the ground, and pushing the ground away, creating that turtle shell or that humpback position. From here, you'll push back into a downward facing dog position, getting a full stretch in the back, straightening out your knees if possible. On the inhale, you'll bend the knees deeply, look forward. Exhale, step the feet outside of the hands. Place your feet on the ground and get into your low squat position. Shoulders rolled back, gaze forward, sitting up as tall as possible. From here, we'll just cycle through the movement, placing the hands on the ground, stepping back, finding that strong plank position, pushing back to downward facing dog, bending the knees on the inhale, and stepping the feet to the outside of the hands on the exhale, coming up into the low squat position with shoulders rolled back. A more advanced version would be to prep the exact same way. Start off in the push-up position, push back to downward facing dog, and instead of stepping the feet, you can hop, maybe get a little hang time, and find that full expression of the low squat position with the gaze forward. This is an exercise that's really good to do before you start your full exercise routine. It gets the body warm, it gets some static movement in. It's a great thing to do for a warm-up before you start your complete physical activity regimen for the day. That concludes this edition of Movement is Medicine by Koji Wellness. I have a description of the exercises with a set and rep scheme at the bottom of the video. Be on the lookout for more videos on this YouTube channel. Check out kojiwellness.com for all things wellness, for all things health, for all things movement. This is Dr. Asia Koji signing out. Until next time.